If you've been following my channel for a while, you know that the Leica Q2 is my favorite camera of all time. I've been using it for 2.5 years, and in that time I've accumulated some accessories that I think are really useful if you own this camera. So these are my top 5 accessories for the Leica Q2. The first accessory is something I actually bought pretty early on, and is this thumb rest. If you own the Leica Q2 or if you're interested in the Leica Q2, you know that it doesn't really have a grip. So if you want to see here, the camera is really beautiful, but if you have pretty big hands, it does not really allow to grip onto. The back does have a grip, like a little indentation for your thumb, but it's not that comfortable if you're used to just bigger cameras or cameras who have more substantial grips. So I bought this pretty early on, and it just goes on your hot shoe pretty easily here, and it just adds on to a lot of the shooting experience without having to add a bunch of weight or just bulk to your camera. So it helps rest your thumb pretty nicely here, and it just adds to the look of the camera as well. This is not the Leica branded one. Those are really expensive. This is not cheap either. It's like $100. So this is the best I could find that was cheaper than the Leica one. I wasn't willing to spend something that is almost as expensive as a Leica battery, which if you own this camera, you know those batteries are super expensive. So yeah, the first thing I added was this thumb grip. It's really beautiful, and over the last couple of years, it's some of the paint has rubbed off, but even with the paint rubbed off, I think it gives out a pretty nice look. And if you own not just Leica cameras, but cameras in general, and you use them, you know that they are going to have some bumps and scratches. And I think it just adds to the story of the camera anyway. So, my camera has a bunch of, dents and stuff because I bump into things. I don't really baby my cameras, even the Leica Q2. So yeah, it has some of the paint rubbed off, so you can see some of the brassing here, but I think it looks pretty beautiful, and it just adds on to the look of the camera. My next accessory is this half leather case for the Leica Q2, and this one is made by Leica. I actually got it used on B&H, so it wasn't as expensive as it would have been brand new. So usually what I like to do, even though I do like to not protect my cameras as much, this kind of adds on a little more if you want to dress it up a little bit. I use this camera as like a B or C camera when I shoot weddings. I'm primarily a wedding videographer, but I also shoot photos a lot. So whenever I'm shooting photos for a wedding, this is like my third camera, and I usually just carry it on to here. I don't put it on like on a dual harness camera setup type of thing. This kind of an extra thing, so this goes around my neck, and so if I am bumping into people, it's not gonna go right into the camera or anything like that. So it adds on a little bit of bulk, as you can see, but it's not much, and I think it really makes the camera look even nicer than it already does. And if you don't want to put like an external shell or something, this really adds on some protection to your camera if you want to protect it. But yeah, it's a pretty simple case. The leather, I got this actually right when I got the camera, so like a month after. So this is wear and tear over the last 2 years, and as you can tell, it looks pretty new. You just screw it onto the bottom of your camera with this, and it holds onto it really nicely. It doesn't really bulk it up. It's really still really nice to hold. It makes the camera just look really beautiful. And yeah, it's one of my top ways to just have the camera and just wear it if I'm shooting an event or something. My next accessory is actually already on the lens. It's a lens filter, and this one is a kind of like a Pro Mist filter, but it's made by Moment. It's called the Cinebloom Filter. This is the 10%, and it adds that highlight glow that people like, especially if you're shooting at night. It's really nice effect on your pictures, and even Leica cameras, they're not immune to like that sharpness that you sometimes get with the sensors. So this softens it up a little bit. Even though this is a beautiful lens, sometimes I like to get a different character out of my shots just to give it some variety and just something a little more fun. So this is really great for that. And it's not on here all the time, but when I do have it on, I tend to, it gets really out of the way because of this lens hood. So even if you have a lens hood on there for any type of filter of this size, you're not going to see it if you have your lens hood on it. So like if you want to protect it, this is like metal. So any of your filters, it doesn't have to be this filter, but if you have any filters and you drop your camera on this lens hood, it'll hurt, but at least it's nice and protected. So yeah, a Pro Mist filter or a Cinebloom filter, it's a high recommendation for me. My next accessory is actually this camera bag. This is the Ona bag in leather, and I've had this for a couple of years, and this is my preferred way to carry on my Leica Q2. I really love the look of this bag. It's super functional for the way that I like to travel. It doesn't have tons of pockets, but the pockets that it has this big compartment, and you can have dividers. I usually don't put dividers on here because I like to just not bring a bunch of stuff. So I have room for my Leica Q2. I have enough room for like the case if I want to put the case on it right away. an extra battery if you want to bring an extra battery. It fits that in here as well. And you still have a bunch of room for if you want to bring an iPad mini, or if you want to bring another camera or a notebook. There's a bunch of room in this bag, but there's also an alternative to this bag. If you like the look of this bag, but either you don't like leather or you don't want to pay the price that it is for like a leather bag, they also have a canvas version. And this was actually my first camera bag that I ever bought like 6 or 7 years ago, and it's the exact same design except just a different material, so it's held up pretty nicely. So if you are if you want to know how long these last a very long time, and the material kind of has some worn marks on it, but it's really sturdy still, and it's still my preferred way to carry around cameras. My last accessory is actually this flash, and it's pretty new. I got it last year, and it's the Lightpix Labs Q2 Mark II, and it's a really nice and compact size flash. As you can see, it's I was looking for something that would fit my Q2 without adding much bulk if I wanted to bring it for like everyday sessions, or if I want to shoot a wedding with this, which I actually have. This is primarily what I use it for. I use it for flash photographies at weddings, and it's super nice and compact. You can still use it to bounce light off of the walls and stuff like that. It's it's pretty small, but it still has all the functionality that you would need from a flash. The only downside is it is all manual, so if you're not super comfortable with manual flashes, it takes a little bit getting used to, but it has a bunch of features. You can also use it as a video light. As you can see, it's not super bright, but in a pinch, it really helps and it adds on a little bit to your shots. If you want to, instead of doing a direct flash, you want to just do a little bit of soft light on there. It's really useful. As you can see, it doesn't add much bulk, and it kind of resembles those like old school styles of shooting flash photography. And I like this more low-key setup if I'm in the middle of the dance floor shooting pictures at a wedding. And it doesn't add a lot of, I'm pretty invisible with this camera. People don't usually tend to look, so it gets me really interesting shots of people, and I can get really close in there with the 28mm focal length. So it's super fun to use this at the weddings to do more experimental type of shots. So it's been really fun. But the best thing about this flash, that it's also a trigger. So if you press this button, you can take the flash right off the camera. So when you take it off, you can still fire it. And the way I like to use it is to get higher angles. So if I'm shooting like this, I can get some shots in different areas. So it'll still fire in different directions and any way you want it. So you can get really interesting shots than what you would if it was just attached to the camera. You can put it somewhere and kind of bounce it off of things. So it's really useful. And again, it's a super compact solution if you want to do flash photography. And yeah, I think this is a very useful piece of kit, and it doesn't have much bulk. It's really inexpensive for what it is, and I highly recommend it. So the last thing I'm going to talk about today is actually something that just came out. This is an accessories video for Leica Q2, but I thought that this might be useful for someone who just got a Leica Q2 and wants to update their camera for the first time and what that's like. So what you do is you go to the Leica website and you go down to Leica Q2, you find your firmware update. This is the 5.0 firmware update, which adds a couple new functions. And once you do that, you put that onto an SD card, and once it's loaded to the SD card, you put it right onto your camera. So once your camera is loaded with the SD card, you go to the last page on your menu. You go to camera information and you go to firmware. This one on my camera, it's on 4.0. And just to update it, you go to start update. It'll recognize that it has an SD card with the update already. And it'll ask you to update the firmware to 5.0. Click yes. If you have any saved profiles, you just press yes. And I'll do this in real time just so you can see how long it takes on the actual camera. Because I know that whenever I update firmware, sometimes I think, is this taking too long? I'm not so sure. So I'm gonna run this as it goes, and just so you can see in real time how long it takes. Once the update's finished, you just have to restart the camera by pressing or turning the camera right off, and then restarting your camera by just turning it back on. This update's getting a lot of positive buzz because it adds eye detection onto the camera, which is nice to see that Leica's still upgrading the Leica Q2 even 3 years later, with the rumors that there's a Q3 in the horizon. So it's nice to see that, and I'll show you where you can find it. So if you go on your settings here, you can go right into your different focusing modes. There's eye and face, and it'll automatically detect your eye, and so you can see it right on the viewfinder. Another useful feature for people that use this camera for video is that now you can actually set both of your autofocus for your photo and for your video for separately. So even on the menu, if you go to focusing, there will be 2 different menus tabs here, so you can select your photo or your video for continuous or single shot for both. So it's really useful if you want to have different settings for both photo and video. So I'll show you what that looks like in camera so you can get a feel of what that looks like for both photo and video. So what you're seeing is from the Leica Photos app. So you can tell this is on photo mode, and as you can tell, there's a box around my face and around my eyes. So this is the eye detection that was just introduced. And obviously it's not going to be super robust like Sony's or Canon's, but still really nice to see on a Leica camera what that looks like. And you know, in order to get the focus, you just have to press the shutter and it'll focus on the eyes. So that's really nice to see, and contrast-based face detection. So this video mode, and I'll put side by sides what it looks like on the Leica Photos app and an actual clip, because it does degrade the image quality a little bit here on the Leica app. As you can tell, it's tracking my face. It has a square on my face, a box around my face, and on my eyes. So this is what it will look like if you're using this for video. And honestly, this is a control environment, but it's still really nice to see how that works. And if I put my hand in front of my face, how fast it focuses back up. So yeah, it's really nice to see Leica still upgrading these cameras and still trying to put more features in the Leica Q2. And if you're curious on what it looks like if you're shooting more video on the Leica Q2, this is what it will look like if you're in a control environment, next to what I would use with like a Sony. So this is what it will look like. Thank you so much for watching this week's video. If you have any more questions on the accessories or on the new firmware update, please leave them in the comment section below. And if you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you next time.